Right, so Oisin Murphy won his first ever British Classic at the weekend, riding Qipco to victory in the 2000 Guineas at Newmarket. And I'm delighted to say that Oisin is with us on the line now. Good morning to you, Oisin. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Morning, guys. Great to be on.
Listen, talk to us about the weekend. It must have been incredible. You've mentioned in plenty of interviews in the past that getting your hands on a British Classic was a huge ambition of yours. Then on Saturday, it finally happens.
It was a lifelong dream come true. I suppose at 24 years of age, I do a lot of dreaming, but you don't think these things will necessarily happen. Qipco is trained by Andrew Boulding, who I started my apprenticeship with. I've been based in England for about 8 years, and I've been with this trainer since the very start, primarily based with him. And obviously the horse is owned by Qatar Racing, and I've been retained by them for 6 years in total now as well. So it was amazing. It was a fairy tale thing, and he is the best 3-year-old colt in Britain at the moment, and possibly in Europe. So there's a lot of pressure and expectation, but to get the right result is a great feeling.
What a unique way to do it as well, to have such a big milestone in your career achieved in front of no supporters at all. Hopefully it's the one and only time that the event will take place in front of no fans. Was it a little bit surreal?
You don't notice it during the race, but obviously when you're walking around the parade ring beforehand, there's no noise and it's empty. You're expecting people to be hanging over the rail, and massive enthusiastic crowd. And after the race, similar. But during it, as a jockey, you block out everything and you just try and focus. And realistically, I'm just pleased we're able to race behind closed doors safely with the current situation. The procedures are very stringent and we must adhere to them, but we're all happy to do that. And I think horse racing can lead the way at the moment as a sport that can actually go on and take place safely.
Sorry, go on, Nathan.
I was going to say, it was such a stunning victory from Qipco, and then you look at the statistics afterwards, and it's the fastest ever time in a 2000 Guineas, faster even than Frankel. And I'm wondering, is that just down to the greatness of the horse, or did the fact that there was no crowd there have any impact on that? Do the horses react differently, do you find, when there's not 50, 60, 70,000 people there?
Absolutely. They don't get as stirred up in the parade ring. There's less for them to get worried about. But there was a tailwind, so we were being pushed forward and the ground was very fast underneath. There was a drop of rain, but that just took the sting out of it. And when it's like that, they can run very fast times. Look, he's an exceptional horse. Qipco have sponsored the race for the last 10 years, and that's obviously the parent company of Qatar Racing. So for them to have Frankel and now have their own winner of the race in such a short period is massive.
Does it increase the pressure that you needed to get the job done?
I was trying not to focus on it. I was actually I was speaking to Sheikh Fahd the morning of the race, Saturday morning, and we didn't touch on how I was going to ride the horse at all, which is pretty strange, but I think we were both feeling it. Now we can admit that. Obviously, before the race, I was a little bit more reserved.
Well, can you tell us how you did ride the horse, Oisin? Because you did a great video on the Champion Series YouTube channel, I think yesterday, where you broke down exactly your approach to the race. For those who haven't seen it, what was your approach?
So I was drawn in 15, and normally the stalls where the horses jump out of are in the centre of the track in Newmarket, but they had them up against the standside rail. So my concern was that all the horses drawn to my inside, to my right hand side, would gravitate over towards the rail, because it's easier to ride a horse up against the rail rather than it's something to guide you rather than being out in the centre of the track. But after going a couple of strides out of the stalls, I realised that Ryan Moore, who was riding for Aidan O'Brien, Arizona, and Frankie Dettori, who was also riding for Aidan O'Brien on Wichita, were going to go straight and stay off the rail and hold their kind of line, if that makes sense. So that was my first and major concern out of the way. And then all I wanted to do was get him to travel nicely, keep it as smooth as possible for as long as I could, and then let the race develop in front of me and try and pick up and win. It sounds very simple now, but really I break it down that simply in my head. Obviously, there's lots of things going on as you every couple of furlongs or every furlong you're thinking about, oh, where do I want to go? Am I following the right one? should I make up some ground now? But you have to try and keep it as sensible and as simple as you can, really. And the horse has a great mind. He's a very good temperament, so he doesn't pull. He relaxes very well, which is a major help as a rider.
So does it change your entire approach to a race tactically if Frankie or if Ryan end up dragging the horse towards the railing, given your draw?
Absolutely, because then I'm stuck behind them. And what if the horses to my right aren't very good and they start to get tired? And then I get stuck in a pocket, nowhere to go, and then you have a hard luck story. Whatever about having a hard luck story at Wolverhampton on a Friday evening, a hard luck story at Newmarket in a classic is pretty hard to swallow.
And if that hard luck story is an interesting point, do you then, in that hypothetical situation, thankfully that hypothetical situation didn't emerge, are you going off the course blaming yourself? Do you get the blame? How does it work with these hard luck stories? I presume they're kind of bitter pills to swallow.
They are, but you must just hold your hands up, because it's plainly obvious that, you know, I'm in charge of riding the horse and trying to get the results. And if things don't work out, it's my fault. No one tells me how to ride him. You know, when I ride for these people, I do whatever I think is best, and they have the confidence to allow me to do that. So ultimately, it falls on me to make the right decisions.
How much better have you got at that sort of decision making over the last 6-7 years with the experience you've gained? Because what you talk about there, it's quite easy to describe after the fact, but when you're in the middle of a classic and you're looking around and you're having all these various different thoughts and you have to process them quickly and you have to come up with the right decision, do you look back now and think, you know, actually I can make those decisions with far greater certainty now than I would have 6-7 years ago?
Yeah, I think certainly at the moment, I feel like I'm riding well, touch wood, that, you know, it stays like that. But and I have never spoken to another sports person about this, but I must say it definitely applies to jockeys. No matter what races you're winning, whether they be ordinary ones or big group ones, your confidence is affected on a day-to-day basis. Nobody believes in themselves truly every single day. Like when I get beaten on 4 favourites at Epsom on a Wednesday evening, I'm not going to jump out of bed to ride out the next morning. I have to drag myself out of there, because we lose so often and so much more than we win. Like last season, I was champion jockey. I operated at 20% strike rate, but that meant 4 out of the 5 I was losing on. So you must just pick yourself up. I'd say what I have learned from riding all over the world is, after a few bad days, just put them to one side and don't overthink. You want to learn from your mistakes, but often you're creating mistakes in your own mind that really didn't occur at all. You just, for whatever reason, things didn't go to plan. You know, particularly last year, I was about 12 in front in the Jockeys Championship, and I went 20 behind. That was the greatest feat of clawing that back, and the adrenaline rush when I went clear again. I don't know how many I won it by in the end, maybe 30 odd, but that taught me a lot.
When you are 20 behind, what are you saying to yourself? How do you pull yourself out of that to come back from that deficit?
I remember texting Frankie Dettori the sectional times when he won the Irish Oaks at the Curragh, and he knew kind of the pressure I was under, the pressure I was putting myself under, and he replied and said, "Believe in yourself, kiddo, I believe in you." And I just took a second to realise that I hadn't been doing badly. Maybe the stables I was riding for, the horses weren't flying at that stage, but I think the next week I rode 12 winners, and the week after that I rode, a similar total, and then I started clawing back the deficit, and then I picked myself up. But it's not an easy task.
So that conversation with Frankie is a huge confidence boost for you. I presume that those sort of conversations would have been quite big for you as well at the start, when you're hearing some of the all-time great jockeys telling you to believe in yourself and giving you that injection of confidence.
Yeah, because we've all been through it. You know, all the great jockeys you can think of, the Pat Ederys, Lester Pigotts, Mick Kinahans, Kieran Fallon, they've all had peaks and troughs when they've been flying and then when they haven't been. And it's just part and parcel of it. I've ridden 2 winners yesterday and 3 winners the day before, but I know the rest of the week my rides aren't actually super great. Although I have winning chances every day, I had to enjoy, the winners I have been having as well.
Go on, Nathan.
Is racing very open to those type of conversations? Like, listen, you're all going head to head and everyone wants to chase the success, but is it the type of sport where you can call Frankie Dettori, those legends you're answering, you can give them a call because everyone's gone through the same experiences? Like, is there any selfishness at all of you're trying to keep certain things to yourself, or is there a sense of we're all part of this, you pass it on from generation to generation?
I can only speak about the British weighing room. I know I've ridden all over the world, but I'm most comfortable obviously over here, and there's a great camaraderie. We all get on very well together, and we all realise that we can't ride forever and make the most of it. I think there's no hidden agenda in the British weighing room. I would say, between Britain and Ireland, the jockeys are at the highest level in the world. We can go anywhere and ride and win. So, no, it's a very healthy place to be surrounded by, or the people are very healthy to be surrounded by.
That's a really interesting point, Oisin, because I think in a lot of other sports, we sometimes have a little bit of an inferiority complex about ourselves, that we look at the world beaters and say we perhaps aren't as good as them, and perhaps that creates a little bit more infighting or rivalry domestically. Whereas you look around in Britain and in Ireland, we've got the best jockeys in the world, the best trainers in the world. It must give you that sense where you don't need that inferiority complex, where you're like, right, these peers are some of the best in the world as well, and we can have a symbiotic relationship.
Of course, I look up to lots of jockeys, even worldwide. Everyone, Frankie Dettori is a household name, but there's a jockey based in Hong Kong called Joe Moreira, and he's an incredible rider. He's won lots of Group 1s in Australia and Dubai and everywhere. And, rather than being envious of their achievements and their ability, I'd rather admire them.
How critical are you on the races in which you don't win, given the point you just made about confidence? I presume that there has to be a balance there between being cold and callous with some of the criticism, but also not being too hard on yourself to try and dent your own confidence.
Yeah, true. I don't want to leave any races behind me, but at times, like yesterday, I rode a 2-year-old first time out. He was very colty at the start. He's obviously a male horse, and he was doing lots of shouting. His mind wasn't really on the ball, and in the stalls, he didn't jump with them. He got left behind, and I gave him a squeeze out. I kind of got him onto the back of the field, but he was too far back, and the race was over. But he gave me a nice feel, and had that horse jumped with the rest of them, I think he would have won. But there's nothing I could have done to change that. I asked him to go, but he just wasn't concentrating. And it's those sort of situations that you just have to forget about straight away and call your agent up and say, listen, try and get me on that one again the next day if we're at that meeting. Does that make sense? That's how I deal with certain things like that, yeah.
Yeah, I presume there's a huge power in just being able to leave it behind because, as you say, there's literally always another race. Even after the big wins, there'll probably be a defeat coming up pretty soon to try and knock that down as well. It's interesting that you mentioned the great people involved in the sport around the world, from Hong Kong and the entire continent of Asia, because you spent time in Japan during the British off-season this year. How big was that for you to get to somewhere completely different and see how things are done in a far-flung place that isn't quite in your comfort zone?
Japan is a brilliant country. The people are very kind, but many of them don't speak English. So I'm very on my own there. I spent 3 months there this time and 2 months there last year. Horse racing in Japan is their #1 sport. The betting turnover there is 1,000 times what it would be in Europe, and that's not an exaggeration. Their prize money is the highest in the world. Their breeding industry is the best in the world because they buy all the best broodmares from Ireland and England and France and everywhere they can, and they cross them with the stallions they have there. But all the pedigrees of the stallions they have in Japan are from Europe as well. So they've been very clever in how they've managed their horse racing. Japanese people are only allowed to bet on 3 sports: boat racing, indoor cycling, and horse racing. So even if you've no interest in horse racing, JRA is Saturday and Sunday, just twice a week primarily. You're going to 12 races a day, maybe 2 or 3 meetings. You're going to watch the horse racing because everyone's talking about it. It's advertised everywhere. I won the Japan Cup last year on Suave Richard. There's 7 horse racing newspapers, so imagine there's 7 racing posts printed daily. It's just on another level out there. It was my ambition since 2012 to get there. I never thought I would, because they only take 5 foreign jockeys at any one time, and they do it on world rankings. So last year when I was there, they had the best 5 jockeys in the world on ratings. So it's a pretty tough place to get to, but I adore it, and I ride the best horses there. The opportunities I receive in Japan are just incredible. I rode 7 winners on one day. I broke the record for the amount of winners in a month, in a 3-month period. But I was riding the best horses.
Do you get to appreciate that, Oisin, that you're like, I'm in one of the most fascinating countries in the world, I'm incredibly successful in this whole sphere at the moment? Or is it very much a period of self-improvement and always thinking to the next race and trying to get better and better? Do you get a moment to soak that in at all?
What I am worried about is trying to go back and break the record I set myself. I don't know if it'll be possible. And what the most difficult thing about Japan is, normally I wake up about 56 kilos, guys. So roughly that's 123.5 pounds. In Japan, I have to do 54 kilo. So I have to be 119 pounds. I have to weigh out at 119 pounds. So to do that with my lightest gear, I have to be about 116.5 pounds, which is 53 kilo, which is a good 3 kilo what I'm comfortable at, if that makes sense. And that's all water loss, realistically. So I spend from Friday night to Sunday very dehydrated every single week. And over a 12-week period, which includes Christmas and New Year, when all my friends and family are tucking into dinner and a pint of Guinness, I'm literally sipping on ice cubes and on the treadmill and sitting in a hot bath. It's not much fun, but when I end up riding the quality of horse I do, it makes it all worthwhile.
That sounds incredible. So it is a situation where it is hell, actually, and I presume the best part is winning, and to get to that position where you can even get into the starting blocks is a nightmare situation for you. Like, what goes through your head during those weight losses? What is the thing that motivates you to keep doing them during those 12 weeks?
Just the good horses, guys. Like, they tend to race, so it's very cold in Japan, November, December, January. That's when they have their best racing, and that's when I'm there. So you're racing on very fast ground. It's literally rock hard ground. It's like 2 degrees every day. I've got no clothes on because I can't put them on, because I've got to do light weights. So I'm freezing cold. The first couple of races every day are maidens, so horses that have never ran before. They've had one run. They've never won. So they're not very exciting. But once you get them over and done with and get yourself through that pain barrier of hopefully you've won on 1 or 2 of them, then the better ones start coming out. And by race 9, 10, 11, 12, they're the proper machines, and you really enjoy riding them. But the first half of the day is torture.
The jockey's mindset is just incredible. When what you're talking about, what you put yourself through, and even been out in 2 degrees wearing practically nothing just to keep that weight down as low as possible, and the sacrifice. I'm sure you probably don't call it a sacrifice, but like, are there days where you ever question, like, is this worth it? Is it worth what you have to put yourself through to get the very best out of yourself?
It's not as difficult for me in Britain and in France and Ireland. The weights are a little bit heavier, although my travel regime is like non-stop. I ride more horses than anyone else, but I have a driver who's brilliant, and I have an agent, and I have a manager, and I have all the people there to support me. Someone does my form. I get an email every day of, how how the races might work out, and that's all. It's paramount to be able to deal with the workload. In Japan, I don't ever want to throw in the towel because I spent 7 years trying to get there, so I better enjoy the couple of years I can qualify to go there. And maybe when I'm 30 years old, I'll realise that, I can't really put myself through doing 54 kilo anymore. But for the next couple of years, I'm going to have to do it for my own peace of mind.
Can I ask, what did you think about during the time away from the sport, as in during lockdown that we've just had? Was Japan presumably one of the last things you did before the world shut down? Like, what do you think about your career? Do you do a lot of reflection? Do you watch back old races? Or did you put racing out of your mind for those 2 or 3 months that we were away from sport? Oh, connection is just a bit weaker. I'm not sure if you're still there, Oisin. We might try and re-establish that. That appears to have frozen, but it's a remarkable mindset, Nathan.
Oh, it's just insane. Like, every jockey you talk to, but to go through that over in Japan, as he spoke about, like, it's difficult. He's by himself. You're over the Christmas period, and again, sucking in ice cubes, in hot baths, just for a few winners. It's what separates jockeys. It's what separates an elite sportsman like Oisin from us, from the rest of us, from mere mortals. Like, it's absolutely insane. It's brilliant for him. Like, not every jockey gets the success that he's got, but an awful lot of them are going through that similar sort of sacrifice.
Yeah, Oisin, I think we have you back.
Apologies, guys. We're actually on the road to Haydock. Sue is at the wheel, so we just lost coverage there for a second.
What's the agenda for you in Haydock today?
I think I ride in every race.
Right.
I don't know if there's 8 or 9 races. I've got some nice horses to ride. A lot of them are babies, so they've never ran before. So they'll need educating, but hopefully 1 or 2 of them will go well.
What do you mean by they need educating?
So these kind of ones, the well-bred horses, you don't get them super ready at home because you want to keep their minds as sane and as relaxed as possible. And then at the races, if they're straightforward and handling it really well, they can have 1 or 2 smacks to, like, try and go and win the race. But if they're real babyish, you're better off just go hands and heels and try and get them to finish and have a kind of easy day out. If they're not good enough to win or place, you just try and let them run as well as they can without being hard on them, because being really hard on a horse for their first ever start when they're not mentally ready for it can ruin their whole career.
Just before we broke up with you there, Oisin, I was just asking about how you spent lockdown. Was it a lot of thinking about racing, or did you try and put it out of your mind as much as possible?
Oh, it was a nightmare, guys. Without racing, I've got nothing to focus on for my whole day. So why should I get out of bed at 8 a.m. or why do I even need to get out of bed at midday? I had nothing to do. Eventually, after the first week, I suppose I got my act together and I started training. I was walking and running every day, and I did a bit of cooking, but it's tough going. And you feel sorry for yourself as well. But how can I feel sorry for myself when there was large families stuck in towns and cities and in Dublin and London and Birmingham places? They're the people you would pity.
How do you manage to change that when you're feeling sorry for yourself? Do you manage to change that, or has basically the return of racing been the return of happiness in your life?
No, I after a week or two, I realised that people were in far worse off situations. I was pretty spoiled to live virtually in the countryside and have a free rein to go out and go walking every day and watch Netflix and Skype. Imagine if you had 3 young children screaming the house down all day. That wouldn't be ideal.
No, it's not ideal at all, I can assure you. You've touched Oisin on like some of your incredible success and winning a Japan Cup and winning 7 races a day and all you've achieved on this side of the world and getting that classic now at the 2000 Guineas. July 4th, Qipco is going to go into the Derby as the favourite. You're going to ride the favourite in the Epsom Derby. Is that something you think about every day between now and then, or are you focused on Haydock today and you don't think about what's going to happen on the 4th of July?
It hasn't been officially announced, but I would say to your viewers, the horse is definitely highly possible to go there. I would say he's more likely to run than not in the Epsom Derby. I haven't given it any thought yet. If I was thinking about riding the favourite in the Epsom Derby, I wouldn't sleep for the next month. So I'll keep that firmly out of my mind for the time being.
Just the last question then, Oisin. How great has it been to have racing in the spotlight at the moment? It's the only sport on television. Of course, racing was back in Ireland here yesterday. Do you think about that at all, about how great an opportunity this is for the sport at large?
Absolutely. I think in Ireland, everyone has watched a horse race, and people are more connected to horses as a rule. I love equestrianism, show jumping, and watching the Royal Dublin Show on RTE every year. Horse racing gets a large proportion of coverage, but in Britain it possibly doesn't. And I think the 1.4 million viewers tuned in to watch Qipco win on ITV on Saturday, which was fantastic. And I hope people like me as a jockey and trainers, we can sell the sport over the next week or two. While we have that opportunity, I think we need to grasp it with both hands.
Fantastic stuff. Oisin, there's so much more I wanted to chat about, but unfortunately we're out of time. Hopefully, though, we'll chat to you again and continued success. All the best.
Thanks very much, guys. Take care.